Julie here with Sirius Dallas Moon, Sol Hour, Jupiter Day. So concerning my previous argument with myself, yeah, I made an election with both the ruler of the hour in the 8th house in Mars hour and in Sol hour. What can I say? Aries. Aries. Now that the moon is opposing Chiron, Mercury, Aries in Aries. Um, Sidereally, Aries is still in Aries. That being said, Jupiter is applying to square Aries. This is where I got the Jupiter part because I was like, maybe it's sidereal. No, it's not sidereally. But here is the thing: we're gonna have a crisis of choice whenever anything squares Jupiter, like Mars, that's about to. Then we have a crisis of choice, and um, and the crisis of choice is a crisis of access to choice. For example, right now, if I take a look at the 2026 elections for Israel preparations, I see that a party that was really strong on women's rights was unifying with a right-wing party, um, and there's still an equal amount of women in the front page. Um, Actually, the women tending to Gemini issues like infrastructure, communication, and um, corporation laws and so on. However, what was um, what was lost was the women's rights at the front, and what they contended for is rights or budget only to people who, bless you, who serve the country, and they meant that as basically they meant to exclude the Orthodox that don't go to the army. And yet we cannot talk about that without talking about sexual boundary violation and women's rights within the army, which would prevent obeying illegal order, by the way, because honoring the feminine, crimes against humanity are committed by the infiltration of the extortion cults along the years. And these are people that grew in rites and of passage of since infanthood, degrading the feminine and going through feminization rituals as humiliation rituals. Now, this is an example and the unification happened quite recently. So when we talk about Mars Jupiter crisis, we had a certain the choice that was made was sacrificing access to choice. Um, and then they attempt to remediate by having equal representation, at least on the cover front of women, um, which is big enough. And it's not and it's kind of unusual that the party that is run by a man or a person that at least gender expression is a man um, is actually I did not mean to allude anything. I just mean to not assume a gender. Um, and it's actually unusual where a party led by a man who's actually known to be very adhering to the celebrity or the one leader PR that was with it to and it's funny because it was to somewhat in his detriment. I'm talking about Yair Lapid here, and yet his policies are very related to creating allyship, very seventh house type of policies, allyship or declaring Qatar as an enemy. Powerful moves, and in the party there is, I think, equal representation of women. Now that party united with a right-wing party, and then we have a sacrifice of access to choice within the army. because they would have, now here's the challenge that women would have. Women that are already up the rank had to be rubbing shoulders with the Ghislaine Maxwells. And to be rubbing shoulders literally means participation. This is why you hear about me with a YouTube channel with 29 subscribers and not 29K subscribers. And my gosh, I don't know how much my colleagues have. Like, um, but this is where, um, let's just say there's a certain threshold where, and I have to admit, I also went through occultistic rape. I just did not, and I had some sort of a place to stay, which is a major signification, a major difference. I was raped within that place as well. When we talk about occultistic rape, we're also talking about MK Often and astral rape. Basically, it was next to my mother, with her not being able to do anything. Um, and 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 persistently insistent on abolition of occultistic rape as prerequisite to the many things and the many opportunities and the many so calling to declassify MK Often and so on and so forth. Um, Also because I genuinely believe, regardless of the fact that it's horrible to go through occultistic rape, um, uh, I also genuinely believe that that's the one thing that changes everything. And when I ask myself what is the one thing that changes everything, and I find it, then I am insistent upon it because I saw not just because of the insistence or the friction but because the occultistic rape is basically violating sovereignty, but it also um, takes away the sovereignty, and we cannot do Aries things. We cannot do sovereignty, including diplomatic relations, and we're going to see it as of the 50s with Aries Taurus. Diplomatic relations will not be diplomatic relations when we will not abolish occultistic rape. And um, and this is also connecting to the fact that the A bomb was with Aries and Pluto agreeing. Which, by the way, I was not the person that identified it. I think world astrology or world mundane astrology identified the outer planets mundane astrology, which was Pluto and Aries agreeing, or in harmonious relation rather than a square or conjunction relation upon the Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now, of course, there were many other A bombs. I was born in 1984 when there was nuclear leakage in around India. People that were born in the 1990s were still dealing with the ongoing Chernobyl events. Um, Hiroshima, and there are many experiments that are done. There are many nuclear experiments that are done. But Hiroshima and Nagasaki, an actual outright broadcasted A bombs dropping on big cities, was something that we only saw with Aries agreeing with Pluto. And this is where occultistic rape compounds to a complete and total rejuvenation, which is complete and total destruction, um, and and the spiritual ideas behind the dropping of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Gigi Young touched on that a little bit, or to create a new world, or we know that Oppenheimer was an avid reader of the Bhagavad Gita, one of the spiritual Vedic texts, or the spiritual Vedic text, where everybody was aware of him calling himself, I'm not going to use I am here because with many things in Aries, we do not abuse the word I am. And I am is an identity. So, where he identified himself as destroyer of worlds, or that he becomes destroyer of worlds, and indeed it's a result of occultistic rape and ritual abuse. Those who heard me talking about A bombs, you can consider that a study case. Indeed, Aries conjoins my Mercury, which opposes my natal Pluto, and it was around my Pluto square and my Neptune square. Now, Neptune would be the radiation leakage, the helplessness factor. Um, Pluto is the actual explosion, the standing in one's power, and the notion that the woman that assisted the woman that assisted the A-bomb project was there because there was the only place where she was treated as a woman respectfully, both for both her intellectual properties and honored as much as it was possible for the feminine. So that was yeah, heavyweight topics. Now, this is where first of all, we want to honor the fact that Spica and Aries Chiron still sort of a kind of oppose. Um, and this is where abolition occultistic rape is 12 o'clock from how Spica sees justice. So if Spica sees justice by, for example, I don't know, changing the juristic system and so on and so forth, but if occultistic rape is a requirement to go up the rank, then we have a profound um, a profound issue that is actually somewhat remediated by the Epstein dossiers coming out. Ketu Maghav would probably do a lot to remediate. I tended to. I'm taking a little break from tending to the dossiers because I want to look at the even bigger picture. Um, n- Now, Soul Hour. When we think about Jupiter squaring Aries Chiron, this happens twice in 12 years. So Jupiter squaring Aries Chiron is a crisis of choice where the access to choice is only when we abolish occultistic rape. Um, First of all, we've just solved a conundrum that I addressed before, but um, this is a crisis because Jupiter is about to go Procyon, and we are going. Whenever Jupiter Procyons, we're thinking about preventing a world war, which can't be prevented without abolishing occultistic rape. And then you would tell me, surely, but JFK, and I'm like, that's what got him going. Now, here is the thing: to the extent that he antidoted that, and what he wanted was for the secret societies, or what people call the deep state, to no longer be secret. It's impossible without abolishing occultistic rape. And yet, to abolish occultistic rape, we needed to know about that, and the Epstein dossiers did a great deal in informing us. Um, and there are many other factors and so on and so forth. Of course, we needed to be informed of that in order to, but basically people experience spiritual warfare, which means astral rape, which means occultistic rape, and they try to negate it in various ways, and then people would see, for example, in the times where they were raped, they would see I don't know, some billionaire coming up with some project or with some idea, and then when they retrieve their energy, something would be aborted, somebody would be held accountable, somebody would divorce somebody would have a settlement in association with what was previously polygamy, or borderline polygamy, and um, and the connection between, let's say, the Me Too to plagiarism. Now, um, the intricate layers around it are things that I've already addressed in dozens, I think almost 100 episodes. So people can watch those. They can watch my episodes about the dossiers. I myself went through at least a very intense 3-4 years when I think about it, attending to all of these things. And the videos are over there. The videos are in Spirit of Matter. The videos are in um, Sirius Talisman on Beetroot, or Sirius on Beetroot, Rockefeller Astrolix on Beetroot, and Jupiter Point of Talis on Beetroot. All of them, the many channels are the many times that are less than the times that that let's just say, if somebody asks, well, where are the missing scientists? Hi, it's me. Ik maak probleem. And so, yeah. Um, so the upcoming Jupiter Aries conjunction, and let's move a little forward towards that, because Jupiter Procyon can be, oh, we have a choice, we can prevent war. It's kind of a JFK type of um, transit. Okay, of course, in the natal chart of a person, it can be being favored, and there are many significations of that I addressed at other times, um, where being favored can be a two-edged sword, particularly in those circles. Now, um, towards the Jupiter Procyon, before the Jupiter Procyon, no, towards the Jupiter Procyon is indeed applying to square Chiron in Aries. Mars would already be in Taurus. Lilith would be 18 degrees upon the beginning of the orb of that square, um, with Jupiter ruling it, and so we're definitely going to run into big issues, because Procyon looks within, and Aries was the excluded from. Now, with Aries in Aries, Aries was the excluded from the self. There are many the episodes in which I talk about the occult and tech and sovereignty and what happens to people and the effect of that and how it makes it difficult to find out who did what. Um, um, Particularly with the dissociations and so on, or the consciousness, there's some sort of consciousness, weird things happening there. And those are things that I discussed in other videos, but this Jupiter square is a crisis. Now, Jupiter went retrograde on Procyon. So if we take it, um, if we take it a week forward, we see Jupiter on Procyon, where we already had that square, including with Chiron, because Chiron was kind of like degree 22, 23, 24. Um, and this is um, an understanding that the wound around healing occultistic rape, um, meets a challenge with Jupi Procyon, or the people, for example, that were the favored in the secret society were inaugurated, so to speak, by occultistic rape and by them occultistically raping. And um, and yet we cannot actually have world peace with occultistic rape. We have to heal that wound. We have to abolish this practice so that there can be world peace. What does it mean towards the people that were already favored, so to speak, in that way? Um, and this is where we can think about Aries Chiron as remediation to the axis of Magha and Deneb Algedy, or Regulus Deneb Algedy, which is kind of like the, I want to say the Epstein to Sears axis, but I wouldn't not say it either. um, and and the understanding that healing this wound is important, yet we are going to have a square that is significant. And this is a crisis where, for example, if these people are judged, let's say, for crimes against humanity, the fact that they were subjected to occultistic rape since infanthood is a point um, a point to consider, because the practice of occultistic rape need to be abolished so that they would even have access to choice. Which, and you say, surely does that mean that the people that committed crimes against humanity were basically mind controlled? Well, duh. That's the point of Epstein to Sears. That, like, we understood nothing about Epstein to Sears if we did not understand that. Now, um, and this also challenges the notions of a conscious perpetrator. Now, of course, they would have to show that they really, really, really want, but they would have to show that since age 11, 12, 9, and and um, all that while the at the degrees where kind of like where the big harm is done, um, that would already be exit only by death, which could have been the guillotine itself. Now, the fact that we address that openly is already, to me, um, already an omen that, kind of like, before the Me Too, there were people speaking up. Now, of course, people cannot cross that threshold by still doing, let's say, crimes against humanity, occultistic rape, and so on. That being said, by nourishing the feminine, honoring the masculine, we approach a significant progress in that access to choice. Is it not a crisis? It is a crisis. It is a crisis. This is something that can, Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, um, and Aries is in Andromeda constellation, where we re-include the people that were occultistically raped. The friction is a genuine friction. It's not an opposition where we have to kind of like, where we can see one another, and we have to find a way to see if there is a point that we can remediate, or meet more than halfway to either side, or meet more than halfway towards one side and then more than halfway towards another side in a way that they both kind of agree. This is a friction, this is a tension, this is a Martian, it's a growth aspect, because that tension is there. Um, if I try to think about, for example, um, the way that I see that tension in my life, I have Lilith and Uranus squaring one another, both in Jupiter signs, and while Uranus can be shock and trauma, and Lilith is about sovereignty, but it's in Pisces, and so this is where I was, unfortunately through horrible things, acutely aware of the necessity to have access to choice, and how occultistic, any form of occultistic rape is detrimental to having access to choice, but also to self-trust, sense of self, and so on and so forth. Um, now, no. At the same time, obviously, the continuation of these practices cannot be with humanity sustaining. Now, unless people want to be, to be evangelically either fighting the Inquisition while they haven't actually changed the scripture to honor the feminine, like the Huguenots, or being the Inquisition, which is a trauma in itself. Um, the people, survivors of ritual abuse that had to be perpetrators, talk about the traumatic effect of also being the perpetrator. Um, and so I'm taking a break from talking about either trauma. So, but um, this is where um, mm, 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 yeah. And by the way, when people say, people like the same disbelief that there is about being a victim, there is also about being perpetrator. And perpetrator doesn't have to be what happens at the physical rituals. It can simply be, even when I yell at my mom, um, because I have been dealing with, invisible harassment. And some people say, "Oh, that's not a perpetrator." I'm like, that's exactly how these patterns begin. um, um, mm, 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 mm. Which is why the abolition of the abolition at the stage of where, before somebody is a victim, is important. And then if that didn't happen, then at least, and this is, antithetical to the original purpose of the practice, those horrible practices. Now, um, by the way, many people that as far as they could chose not to bring children. Those are a part of the reasons for many. Um, including people that are within those circles. Sometimes I know that there are sometimes not by choice, but also um, let's just say the people that want to be family people. There's a way to make the. Oh my God. Yeah. Kind of like Epstein also had a cloning factory, a breeding factory, and, and so yeah. Now, when did we last have Jupiter? Jupiter was opposing Aries during the Me Too, where the juristic procedure had to be altered due to the nature of sexual offenses. So, and the Me Too was, um, yeah, about almost a decade ago. The closing square would have been, if the entire thing is 12 years. So, Libra. Libra, that would be, the Me Too was 2017, no? So, Libra would have been 2016, 2000. Oh, this was progressing, so it was. It's not a node. It's not retrograde. So that would be 2018 would be Scorpio, 19 would be Sag, 20 would be Capricorn, and around my 2020 to 2000, around either 2020 2021 we would have um basically the square. It would be around my Jupiter return actually. Yeah, I also have Jupiter square. I have Jupiter square everything in my natal chart. So I forgot because I think about the moon, but it's opposing Jupiter. So as a natal carrier of Jupiter Aries, and I talk about access to in ritual abuse in Saturn sign. So Saturn in the ninth house, Jupiter ruling over Uranus, a revolutionary perception about choice. And that's the square to Aries. It's a crisis of access to choice. This is where I had to fight with feminists that said, no, if a rapist chose to be a rapist and so on and so forth, where I clearly saw that their lower chakras were misaligned and they were operating from a trauma response that was like an autopilot, which reminded me of the autopilot that I was when I was violated. And beyond the terrifying, I wish for people to have an easier time doing scientific discoveries. Oh my God. Um, yeah. Um, so, but it's true. um, now, so this is where we're gonna have a crisis of the access to choice, but with an exalted Jupiter. and Jupiter is going to be conjoining Procyon. Now, here's the thing with Procyon. Procyon can have issues with like anger and so on and so forth, but it's also very passionate and entrepreneurial, which is something that it has in common with, let's say, anything in Aries. Um, and this is where um, this is where this Jupiter is supposed to bring some sort of peace and remediation, but is squaring Chiron. Doesn't actually receive a trine to Mars, a sextile to Mars, um, and is not helped in any way, shape, and form right now. Upon we might have some amiable aspect from the Moon the week later, but and a conjunction, probably another conjunction with Venus before it leaves into Leo for the first time, um, but it is a crisis point, and this is only when Jupiter leaves 25-degree Cancer does it leave the shadow period of its retrograde. It retrograded all the way to 15 degrees, and now it's doing its journey back. Um, and definitely the issue of occultistic rape being at the heart of epic fails, whether it's intelligence, defense, national, international security, but also diplomacy. Because we do not bring peace by occultistic rape or rape of any sort. And this is where um, and this is where yeah, it's kind of like if people are going to towards this honoring of the feminine, they will have to compete with the very few Catholic Christians that were left by fighting the Islamic um, the Huguenots were massacred. Then there were the people. The rates of return from the expedition to the Dutch East India was 45, around 45%. Um, Islam is not has not shown honoring the feminine. and and my prediction is that um, unless Catholicism honors the femininity, and unless Catholicism abolishes occultistic rape, and by the way, if it does, you Falcon, if it does, um, yeah, y'all gonna hear me saying, I don't know what would it even be like to be like Sophia Jesus consciousness. I mean, if it does, you can call me Christian. So, I mean, Catholic Christian, which I never believed in it. Um, um, and I actually think that this is the best advice for anyone. But if Catholics would abolish occultistic rape, it would be like they wouldn't even have to fight Islam. It's like everybody would convert. They might have to compete Islam because it would want to adopt the trend, but and then we can actually have a good basis for one world religion that allows for the various traditions, the various First Nations, the various tribes, without, it's kind of like it's the one thing that changes everything, where we can have a basis for solidarity on a global scale that is that does not negate and even supports diversity. Now, to the people that think, oh my God, that is utopia, I just want us to think about the development. When we think about technological development, it is basically, what is a cult? A cult is technology. Zero rape and zero occultistic rape occult is also zero slavery occult, and a compatible scripture or various compatible. If you remember my astrological considerations for declarations of independence, I need to do one for scriptures, and it probably needs to have Aries in it. Um, Beginning to work on that with Chiron Aries we're gonna have a Mercury Chiron Aries this Scorpio moon. There's gonna be a full moon that's probably going to show us what needs to be done, and then the moon will always have to be in a good election. Mercury in a sextile or in a trine. Um, Sextile would be from Gemini, which would be in its home sign. A trine would be from Leo. I do prefer Gemini to Leo from the awareness to the occult, although I could actually prefer Leo because um, Leo trines Aries, and yet I might, because it's both are fire signs, I might want air, so I would either choose Mercury, Mercury in Aquarius, or even Mercury Sag, which would conjoin my Uranus. Those would be the harmonious aspects. There are also the minor aspects. Um, if we want, because I do believe we want Mercury to see Aries when we elect, kind of like editing scriptures, and it can be a good writing exercise. The first thing when I worked with the creation of the world talisman was I said rewrite in Genesis. Now there's actually something that includes all of the planets. Um, I think a part of my upheaval, a part of the many things that were surging, almost like holistic medicine, were rising to the surface. Was kind of like the getting used to the energies of the each planet in its home sign conjoining. Um, we'd still need to clear we'd still need to clear occultistic rape and its residues. But I'm waiting to see what does that thing do. I did notice that the personal attunement, for example, doing my own essential oil blend, was attuning myself that could help me attune better. Um, and and this is very, very interesting when we think about the global village or Uranus in Gemini. Um, Although it's not a Uranus talisman. Um, and yeah, I'll just see how, because if we abolish occultistic rape, it literally changes every equation. And of course, the person with Urania opposes Aries, with Urania being in Hasta Nakshatra would say that, in the eighth house. And of course, the person with Aries in the second house is, according to some calculations, the first and next to the ascendant. But of course, the person with Aries in the second house would have the skills regarding Aries when the ruler in the ninth, the teachings regarding Aries that are innovative because it's Aries, it's new. So, and by the way, the talismans that I'm dressing is not mine. It's just kind of like I'm waiting to see what will happen with along the line of abolishing occultistic rape, because right now even ordering it would be risky. Um, um, yeah, I could, you know, I have my reservations as to certain things that happened before launching, but I think it's also the effect of like kind of like the effect of the rituals, bringing everything to kind of like a boiling mess. Um, which when I think about, and I was also talking about the body fighting off of the fungi. Um, and yeah, many, many things um, that. that are supportive of one another too. I think anybody that would make any talismanic work would be targeted, and of course there are people that, whether if people went through ritual abuse and grew within certain people, particularly people that came from the families that had the wealth, or but this is also to see where Aries can be the disincluded from societies, not because there isn't any money or any intergenerational wealth, but because of the things associated with the overall global tradition of occultistic rape, um, and the challenges of bringing occult science to the surface at the face of risks of witch hunt and all these that usually were cast on the women, although they were also happening to the men. I think particularly in Iceland, if it was not, if it was actually a true thing that the witch hunts were in Iceland were also mainly men, or a lot of men, um, then that's, I actually need to check that. Um, where witch hunts in Iceland, hunting men. Um, more things that I think about. Oh yeah, Mercury would have to be in a sextile or in trine to Aries. And here, when we talk about, we talk about reimagining the scriptures without occultistic rape. In fact, one of the things that I thought to do, um, we're still waiting for a 36 Phases book. No pressure, but was to do was to go through the 36 phases and reimagine them without rape. The idea was from my Pluto square being squaring from the decan of Aquarius, that would be the exile from paradise. And so and I just looked at it and I was like, there's no consensual sex, and God looks like a weird landlord that rapes the tenant and blames the tenant in trespassing. Oh my God. Yeah. Icelandic witch hunt primarily targeted men, over 19% of those executed for sorcery in the 17th century being male. Iceland is weird. It does have the 1900 chart has a moon in Scorpio, which is not the best place for the moon. This 17 something chart. Let me take a look at Iceland 17 something chart. Um, yeah, 1918. Um, the 17 would have moon 12 degrees Gemini. Moon Rahu. um, in the 12th house, Uranus Procyon. Uranus Procyon, ascendant 20 degrees Cancer. Um, Midheaven. Now, here's the thing: the 1918 chart would have Uranus where the midheaven is, which is around Deneb Algedy. Iceland, you are an interesting place. And by the way, to be, there is a lovely creator from Iceland. And let me see if I can. Okay, I will need to find it because it's not directly in my. But is a woman that spends her time between United States and Iceland. Um, now, Jupiter 20 degrees Taurus, Sol Leo, Sun in its home sign in the second house, fourth house Libra, Venus in her home sign in Libra. Although the moon is in the 12th, it is in Gemini, and the Mercury in the third house, Mercury and Mars in Virgo. Um, Aries ruling. So there is a conjunction between the leaders and the people, in the third house, communication between the leaders and the people. There is a conjunction, which is a hard aspect, but there is a connection between the ruler of the 10th and the ruler of the 4th. Yeah, we have the moon in the 12th, which is, it's also an island, so it's kind of like people in isolation. And then the fact that it's an island could be accounting for that 12th house. Um, Ketu Uranus, Ketu ascendant, Rahu Capricorn, emphasizing the idea of allyship, but also dealing with open enemies. Um, Again, this is the 1700 chart, and Saturn, Uranus in its home sign with Pluto. That's kind of like people probably had no choice if they wanted Saturn in its home sign. Um, but this can be quite a challenge. Yet midheaven Deneb Algadi can alleviate a lot, and they would have a lot of good esoterics. The 70, they hunted the male occultist. They hunted the male occultist. Now, if we're talking about abolition of occultistic rape, Iceland, you are interesting. You're beyond excruciatingly difficult grammar is now my life mission. um, I was warned about Icelandic grammar. I already no, I have to show you because I already know where I would buy um, the language tools, and this is she usually makes shorts. Oh no, I'm gonna it limits. Let's see shorts. Unur. Unur, I hope I was pronouncing it right. Una um, Egerstodir. And um, this is the channel. Yes, I don't click because I don't have the right for the episode. Um, and yeah, she has some basic Icelandic teachings. Um, I know that when they wanted equal representation in the parliament, the women had a no-sex strike. And by the way, I spent an entire degree and a half in politics and governance in one of the most controversial or countering or how should I say it, academic freedom, almost not countering regime, but in challenge with the regime departments in Israel, not knowing a thing about the Icelandic women's strike. Just a point of concern. Those were the rebels. Those were the people that should have had that information. Um, and yeah, and my humble contribution was um, buying the book where Feynman talks about Los Alamos. Yeah, to myself and actually the person that was trying to. I guess it was his mission to try to join me to the Epstein and Zion, and that didn't go. And that didn't go well, or maybe that went better than expected because I didn't participate um, in their type of endeavors, and my teachings remediate going from occultistic rape-based society to zero rape, zero slavery society to an actually sovereign global society, taking into account the world that emerged from there without access to choice and kind of like the new world and the need to bridge between them without perpetuating occultistic rape. Um, Now, you can imagine trying to go to therapy following that drama. Don't. By the way, the guy that said don't was sitting in the head of as the heads of the committees of MK Ultra. That was Biden. Neptune Libra. Um, yeah, I just find Iceland interesting. Um, Now, yes, it's actually true. Like the witch hunts in Iceland. So people are like, okay, move to Ireland. Not if you're a man. But the issue is that the witch hunts. If I talk about, let's say, King James and the witch hunts, the issue was that the men were occultistically raping, and then the women that tried to take their power back were hunted as witches. But also, they were genuinely and authentically um, witches that climbed up the ladder by participating in occultistic rape as perpetrate, kind of like Ghislaine Maxwell's. And I assume that those were a lot of the victims as well. Um, Now, abolishing occultistic rape would be perfect for everyone. So it's definitely that country with the midheaven Deneb Algadi that would execute the men, the warlocks, rather than the women that they raped. Now, of course, it's probably highly idealistic, but it's also kind of not, and this is making Iceland even more interesting. Um, so, but for those that want to, let's say, oh, I'm going to remediate the spirit of the times of the Inquisition by moving to Iceland. Just to facilitate that, think about abolishing occultistic rape and think about seeking asylum on that basis. Um, and also, I don't know what's up with Iceland right now. Let's take a look at the new chart because they're thinking to become a part of the European Union and they have a referendum. They have horrible housing crisis, but a lot of their problems stem from occultistic rape to begin with, as the entire world problems. And this is actually a point where they are in a very good position to abolish occultistic rape. I need to study Icelandic. So, um, it doesn't have to come from Iceland. It can be in anywhere in the world. For example, anywhere in the world. Now, here is the thing. And of course, the person broadcasting about that would be broadcasting from Israel. Half Dutch, half Dutch. um, Now, tending to it. uh, what's the moon doing here? How did we get here? Oh, that's the moon. Then I'll get you on the Jupiter square Aries. Um, yeah, I think we are in good disposition towards this Jupiter square Aries because Mars is going to square Jupiter, and anybody that will survive. It's 45% rate of return from the expedition, but we have a life insurance and traded company. No, so um, so yeah, the moon is still opposing, separating from the opposition on the minute from Chiron. um, our Venus is in the ninth house. This is my Venu Rahu. Abolish occultistic rape in Iceland, and hopefully no volcano wipes us off the planet. And master the most challenging of grammars in the world.